Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden and Will Southard.
Welcome, everybody, to the PPP. My name is Brian. You are listening to the NFL episode. Make sure to stay tuned for the Flavor of the Week episode, which will be dropping on Friday. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and leave your comments below about how annoyed you are at whatever Will has said this week. Joining me, as always, as I teased, is Will Southard. Will, another week in the books. We are now in the off season officially. It's not like we even have a game to recap this week. But all that being said, how you feeling, dude?
I'm doing good, man. I'm gonna make it my hour-long mission in life not to mention Tom Brady one time.
You'll fail. You
other than right now.
You want to put a bet on that? You'll lose. Whatever the terms are, I'll gain massively.
No, I really don't want to, but I'm glad that I'm more clear on my microphone this week, and then people will clearly hear me not talk about Tom Brady one time.
And you're not in a murdery hotel room like you were last week.
Not.
So
I'm back.
Multiple improvements. What do you think of my new getup? Right, I'm sporting the Dolphins gear. I got some Dolphin stuff on my mic. I got a little mini Dan Marino here keeping me company.
I don't understand why you have to have a bobblehead like this far, this close to your face.
I have a small desk. Maybe as the podcast grows, I will invest in a larger desk. As it sits, it's like 44 inches. So is
that like a little Dan Marino hugging your like microphone under the Dolphin? What is that wrapped around your microphone?
That's just a Dolphin logo. Because I want the Dolphins to hold me warmly and make me feel good at night, because they haven't for the last like 20 years or so. So,
goodness.
But things are looking up. So we have an amazing show with an amazing guest who I'm excited about on multiple levels. So Samantha Button is officially our first female guest. So there's that. I'm sure she'll be. I did not tell her. So that's a very exciting on that. She is from NBC Sports. She's also the co-host of the Brawl 22, NFL's podcast, which I subscribe and listen to. Samantha, so excited to have you on. Are you ready to talk football off-season style?
I sure am. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Samantha, why don't you just tell the listeners just a quick kind of snippet about what you do at NBC Sports?
Sure. I'm the content director and an NFL analyst for Sunday Night Football. So you see that broadcast every Sunday night. That's us. That's our primary job, and we are in the off-season now.
Nice. You are also, for better or for worse, but at least for this year, for better, a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan. How's that working out for you?
Better than it has since I was about, 4, maybe. It's been a while. So it's pretty exciting for us.
At least they've made you emotionally resilient. You can thank them for that.
Well, that's true, actually. Between the Browns and the Indians, I am dead inside, so nothing can hurt me anymore.
Right.
So
are you from Ohio? Like I work out of Ohio. Our company is based in Solon. So
okay. That's very near where I grew up, actually. I grew up in Mayfield.
Yeah. So I told Brian about my pilgrimage to the Holy Land of Canton that one time. Every time I go up there, I've actually seen more Browns games than I have any other NFL team, because every time I fly up there, it's on a weekend. And like, if they're playing, I'll try to make a game. And funny story about the Browns. I know we'll talk more about them later, but like the last time I went up there, I saw Baker Mayfield's first game, by the way. I was there for that. And I also
the Jets game where he came in, or his first start.
I was there for that. Yep. Where Tyler Taylor went out. And I also,
I believe it's Tyrod.
Whatever. I went to buy, I showed up late one weekend to buy, I forget who they were playing. And I went to the stadium to buy a ticket at halftime to go in. And like, I was okay with paying like a full price. It was like $55. And the ticket counter guy, I bought the ticket finally. They didn't believe at the gate that I paid full price for a ticket at halftime, because everybody leaves Browns games at halftime. I don't know why. I don't know why that's a thing, but like, they were like, you just bought this? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, where? And I'm like, at your ticket booth. And they're like, no, you didn't. And they're like, we have to scan this, stand right here. But it's a good time. Browns games are a good time now.
It has been a good fan base. And I, for one, am excited that they're actually finding the success that eluded them for 25 years. So continuing our team deep dive, since we have Samantha on, we are going to do a deep dive of those Cleveland Browns. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But first, there is some news, so let's start with that. There's actually some big news that broke last week on Friday. So Houston Texans superstar J.J. Watt was released. Now, it's important to note that he asked for this release. There was obviously been turmoil is an understatement in the Houston organization right now, but he did request the team cut him. They at least did him the favor of honoring that. So what I want to talk to you guys about, and I'll start with you, Samantha, on this. Thoughts on the move? Obviously this is something he wanted. There's a lot of turmoil in the organization itself, but what were your first thoughts when you saw that JJ was released?
Poor DeShaun was left behind there to die alone. I guess that was my first thought, but yeah, I think it was fair. I appreciate when an organization kind of works with a player who's been around for a long time, who has given a lot to them, and I think deserves the opportunity to go somewhere where he might have a chance to be on a competitive team, where he won't be under the thumb of the Jack Easterby cabal. And so I guess I was relieved also on his behalf and kind of outraged for poor DeShaun Watson, although it is a really different situation. I mean, JJ Watt's contract was not great for the Texans. So I think that's something that came into play here as well, is they weren't just doing him a favor. It is better for them to be out from under that contract.
Do you think that he ripped off his shirt and ran around in his backyard like a wild man, like Antonio Brown did when he got released from the Raiders?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes, I do.
I agree. He definitely did that.
That's a nice visual. That's a very large human being running around in his backyard.
Do we think that does JJ have anything left in the tank, you think?
I would have said no, like a year or two ago, but he's a little bit more, I don't know, durable now than he was. I don't trust his health at all. I guess I should just put it out there that way. I'm trying to give him benefit of the doubt because he's a good dude and I feel bad, but I don't see him as somebody who's going to have a long career. I was sort of amazed that he was able to come back and play a full season because I didn't think we'd ever see that out of him again. But it's not that I don't think he can contribute. I'm sure he can be a very significant contributor to someone. I just don't know that I would want to be paying for the expectation that I was going to get a full season, much less multiple full seasons out of him.
I mean, if only we knew somebody who was really good at Pilates and stretching, right? To really just get some longevity out of yourself when you get older. I don't know who we know that could do that.
Is this your Tom Brady plug really already?
No,
we just started.
No, I'm not talking about, no, I'm not mentioning that person, but I'm just saying that we have
if only there was a 43-year-old quarterback who just switched conferences and teams and give me a break. You just couldn't help yourself.
I hope he goes and plays with his brother though. I really do. I don't really particularly love the Steelers, but I think it would make a good story. I mean, the Steelers I guess they didn't lose brothers. They lost someone who had a brother and they retired.
We're going to talk about that. I do want, because obviously they're Gators and you went to the University of Florida. So we'll get to the Pouncey brothers. But let's talk about team fit. Obviously you mentioned Pittsburgh. Samantha, do you think what do you think are some of the teams you think would be either a good fit for JJ or where he may want to go to?
I think Pittsburgh's a possibility. Certainly, I think there's probably a lot of appeal to go play, with the family. But I wonder if he wants to be, because he is a guy who I would expect is in, if not his last contract, his second last contract, and it will be a short one. So I don't know if he could be talked into going to Pittsburgh. They're not exactly in a position where they're going to have a shot to, say, win a Super Bowl anytime soon. So I don't know about that. I've seen Green Bay tossed out there. Who else? Gosh, Raiders.
So you're very high on JJ Watt. You're like, nah, he's gonna die here really soon.
He's overpriced. He's going to be overpriced, right? So, I know the Browns are in the mix too. I'm trying to get excited about that.
I did see
a lot of tickets.
I saw a couple reports about Cleveland being in the mix for him, which could be interesting. I agree. I think that chasing a title is going to be a big motivation for him. He's made a lot of money. Maybe this is a scenario where he takes a pay cut to go for who he views as a contender to have a shot. Here's a little teaser for you. So we now have a writer for the Pigskin Party podcast who is going to be writing at least weekly articles for us. And the first article we just put up on our Patreon, we're redoing our website, so we don't have a website to put it up on yet. And the article is all about how he believes JJ Watt is Lombardi trophy hunting, and that the team that he's going to look for, and yes, there's a brother connection. Totally get that. Both of his brothers play for Pittsburgh. There's a home connection in Green Bay because he grew up and went to college in Wisconsin. But he's going to want to go to a team. I think I agree as well that he has a shot, and maybe he takes a pay cut to do that, to get one shot at an actual Lombardi trophy, because he certainly didn't get that in Houston. Let's talk about DeShaun Watson a little bit. Will, you're on record multiple times on this podcast talking about how he is the best quarterback in the NFL. Debatable, and I have my own qualms on that, but we can all agree he's at least top 5, maybe
we all agree
top
it's
3.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, sucking up to the Browns guest. Well done. But let's start with you, Will. What do you think this means for DeShaun Watson? It's been very publicized how upset he is at the Texans organization with the hiring of Caserio and how he wasn't consulted, and then the head coaching search, and he's just made it perfectly clear that he wants out. Now that JJ has actually gotten out, what do you think this means for DeShaun?
Gotten out.
It's
like it's prison.
He escaped.
I'm free. Yeah, I mean,
actually, real quick. Samantha, you tweeted something along those lines. And if you don't know, Samantha Button is super, hot on the Twitter. So you said something about him like escaping the prison or something like that.
Oh, I think I said that they finally released one of the hostages.
That's what it was.
Referring to JJ Watt.
Yeah.
Poor DeShaun is.
He's the highest profile hostage that they have. So Will, continue it.
So first things first, I don't think we gave this enough discussion. So before I answer that question, I'll say that like JJ Watt, you talk about an organization that does everything wrong, which is the Texans, right? Like immediately when the news broke that the Texans were releasing JJ Watt, he had a video up on Twitter talking directly to like the people of Houston, right? And like, I want you to come from me, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love this city, like blah, blah. Like, that's what you do. You know what I mean? Like he did that right. Like he went out, like that's the best way you can go out, like already with an organization that loves you, right? You're like the face of the organization. I mean, for as much as DeShaun is a thing, he hasn't been a thing longer than JJ Watt. You know what I mean? Like JJ Watt was like Aaron Donald before Aaron Donald was Aaron Donald, even though, yeah. But anyway, like that's like 180-degree difference of a team that gets everything wrong. And then JJ, like it's just a stark contrast. But I mean, I think you know that, what's that picture of like Will Smith in the empty room? Like, you know what I mean?
You've used that analogy before, but
it's so true though. Now it's really true.
Now DeShaun is
like,
Will Smith.
There's nobody there, man. Like there's nobody, like, I don't know. The only thing the Texans could do for themselves is to make this ugly. And like, I don't think that's the move, like I could be the move, but I don't think that's the right move. Like I just don't like, who would want to go play for the Texans right now? Like nobody, this is one of those things where like, they're not you almost would be happier to go play for the Jets. Like, I think you would be happier.
That's saying something,
So, I mean, I don't know, I just think that I think he was done before. I don't think this JJ thing really changed much, but I think it had something to do with JJ's decision. I think he was kind of done anyway, and then like the telling thing was when JJ had that, like that press conference where he kind of like, it was like a call to action that like didn't
it was like
work.
week 15 or 16. Yeah.
And he was like, you owe these fans more than this, like this team quit several times this year. And he told DeShaun, like, sorry, man, we wasted one of your years in your prime, and it's just like, it's like us against the world mentality down there, so I think he's done. In terms of Watt, I don't know, man. Like, God, like you've made so much money. You're a legend in the sport. You're gonna be in the Hall of Fame. Like, why would you want to move to somebody like Green Bay? Like, I'm sorry. Like,
well, I mean, the Packers, they made the NFC Championship 2 years in a row.
Yeah, but it's Green Bay, bro. Like, why would you move there?
He's from Wisconsin, though. This isn't like somebody who grew up in a big city and they're like, oh, I think I'll try Green Bay. I want to hear from Samantha on this. Obviously, you mentioned poor DeShaun. With JJ's release. Where do you think this puts DeShaun Watson? Does it give him more leverage? Does it give him more motivation?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, at first you thought this was kind of the signal, like, okay, they're they're cleaning house. They're going to get rid of everybody who is expensive because DeShaun is forcing their hand, and they're going to start over. They're going to do a total teardown, just like, well, essentially like what the Astros did across town a couple of years ago before they won their, well, not before they won their World Series, before they pretended to win their World Series.
Yeah, they fake won.
With the trash can banging and all that.
Yeah.
But I think, so initially I thought, oh, okay, this is just the first domino. And then they kind of came back and doubled down and acted like, no, we're not going to trade him. And you're just like, I can't believe they're doing this. And everything that we hear out of the Texans front office is that they have no plans to trade him. So I don't know if now it's turned into one of those like who blinks first things, but it's in some ways I would argue that DeShaun has all the power because he could sit out. He could sit out and show up on the last day that you can show up to for it to count as a full season towards so that your contract is technically fulfilled for that year. He'd show up in November, do that. But I don't know. I mean, Texans aren't looking like they're going to budge either because that's a real bad situation if your quarterback does that. And we've seen other players. We've seen, Le'Veon Bell did it. He could do that. He could. But
he made a Super Bowl eventually.
Yeah. There you
With
go.
a different team completely. Yeah.
And so then get out of the Super Bowl team. But they've been pretty adamant that they're not trading him. And a lot of that I think is just smoke. Because it drives up the price. If you say you don't want to trade him, then people will offer you more in exchange. So it might be more about that. So we'll see. I think ultimately he's going to move because they kind of have to move him. But I don't think this process is moving nearly as quickly as A, it should be, or B, I'm sure DeShaun Watson wishes it was.
Well, I mean, the Texans have to do something in the draft, right? Like they can't just throw all their chips in on DeShaun and go into the draft and like ignore the fact that he might not play. Like
they don't have no first round picks.
They have no picks. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like you could take like look at my boy. Of course now
he's so much your boy you can't even think of his name.
Trask. My boy Trask. He's not a first rounder.
Don't make Trask a thing.
But listen, a second or third round pick or like Felipe Franks. I mean, there are a lot of quarterbacks that are coming out that aren't. Zach Wilson or whatever that the Texans could take a flyer on, but like they're damn sure not going to do it if like, they're thinking DeShaun is going to be a thing and he's not, like they need to figure that out for the, and stop doing this like price thing. I mean, they could have a first round. Like if they trade DeShaun, they could have 2 first rounds, like one this year, one next year. So
maybe 2 this year. You never know.
And, they could probably get a top 10 pick for DeShaun Watson plus some other stuff. I don't know which team would do that. That sits in the top 10 currently, but I mean, not out of the question that they have a first round pick. So I just think that they just need to figure that out. And I don't think this ends with DeShaun playing for the Texans because I mean, these are $1 billion franchises. If he just like deuces on the bench, number one, that's really like who's gonna go to a Texans game? Nobody.
Right.
Like who's their backup? Like I don't even know like who their backup is.
I actually don't know who their current backup. Do you, Samantha? Do you know who the current backup of the Texans is?
It's probably
I don't even know.
Yeah,
it's
not
sad.
it's not Savage anymore, right? Because
not
DeShaun
Tom
is
Savage,
right.
Not Matt Schaub.
It's not Schaub, correct? He went to Atlanta.
TJ Yates.
After all the
Is it really Yates from UNC? Okay,
that's what happened to that guy. Okay.
All right. Now we've all learned something. Now TJ
AJ McCarron.
McCarron. Okay, he's got some starting experience. A very little bit.
I forgot about him. Okay.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, you got free agency coming up in almost exactly a month. You got the draft just over a month after that. I mean, if DeShaun's standing his ground, and I agree with you, Samantha, that he's got the leverage here. He has actually, there's been reports come out that the money is not really the most important thing to him. He obviously wants to play for the right coach. He wants to play for a player's coach, a minority coach, preferably from what has come out about, what he wants to do next. But he has no qualms sitting out. He has determined that he has had it with the Texans franchise. And frankly, I don't blame him. And so Houston can sit there and say all they want about they're not going to trade him, but I think the writing's on the wall. They need to make a move. They need to figure it out soon so they can figure out the future of the franchise. David Culley starting his first ever NFL head coaching job, and you've got this hanging over it that just needs to have resolution. Obviously,
I mean, look what like if he would have kept what's his name? Nuke, right? Like DeShaun Watson, like if you trade for him and like I've always said, like that's the guy you do it for, and you give him some weapons, like he's gonna be your $500 million guy. You know what I mean? Like he can do that. It's just that he just got no support. I mean, they had no running game. You know, they were running through like these B tier running backs in Houston forever.
And they had a beat up David Johnson as their premier back as part of that Hopkins deal. I actually read an article today on PFF that was making the case that DeShaun was actually the best quarterback in the NFL this year. I meant to send it to you, Will, because you have actually said that very thing. And they made the case that it's because he did what he did with absolutely nothing, no help whatsoever. Your number one receiver, Will Fuller, who was actually having a great season, got suspended for PEDs. Your defense was dreadful. You had a running back who was way past his prime. You literally had no weapons. Obviously, we've been covering this for a while. We're going to continue covering this. This will not be the last time we talk about DeShaun Watson. Let's keep it going, though. You actually, Will, mentioned something about some brothers. One of which played in Pittsburgh and one of which played in Miami for a very long time. And that is the Pouncey brothers. They were centers. They both actually retired simultaneously. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because they have ties to all three of us. Will, you went to the University of Florida. Samantha, you being a diehard Browns fan and having to deal with Marquise as a all-pro Steelers center, and me being a Dolphins fan. So, Will, I'll start with you. Do you have any feeling? How do you feel about the Pounceys, with their Gator legacy, announcing their retirement at the same time? Do you think this affects anything with Big Ben? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a lot of different questions. I mean, obviously, but Ben and Pouncey were close, man. I mean, there was that quote right after that game, Ben talking about he came back for him,
They were sitting next to each other at the end of the Browns game, I believe. There was like footage of Ben crying and he's sitting next to Marquise.
That's so good. It's so good.
I'm sure Samantha enjoyed that scene. I know I did. I'm not even.
I saw this meme and it was like.
I have that photo saved for when I'm having.
Of course,
that day.
Nice.
It was Chad Kroger from Nickelback holding up the thing, and it was like, look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. And it's the picture of Ben crying. It's so good. But yeah, I mean. From a Gator standpoint, I mean, God, there's so many good, like, legend Gator players. A lot of like convicts too. So there's that
murdery Aaron Hernandez types.
Like, do you know that like 40% of that 08 team like got arrested at some point?
It's not surprising.
Yeah, but they were very good at football, so that's all that matters.
And now their head coach is the head coach of the Jaguars and hired a racist for 2 days. So
yeah, listen, it's all about winning. It's all about winning. But yeah, I mean, like, great Gator legacy. I think it's cool they retired together. I think it's neat whenever, twins in the NFL are always interesting. Like you got the Gronks that are, they're not twins, but they play together. You've got McCourties, the
Devin
Pouncies.
and Jason. Sure.
It's always cool that when you get siblings like that in the NFL, I think, and the Bosas, stuff like that. So it's cool to see them go out at the same time for sure.
Yeah, I do like how they did it together. Like they came in, they didn't come in together. Actually, I think was it Mike or Marquise came in a year earlier than the other, but obviously they both had extremely solid careers in the NFL and then decided to go out together. I thought that was cool. Samantha, any thoughts on the retirement of the Pouncey brothers?
I'm sort of fascinated by them in like a creepy way. Like I think they're a little bit creepy. Like, how twins can be. I mean, not like, the McCourty twins, not creepy at all, right? The Pounceys, definitely creepy. Like, pretty sure they killed a dude while they were at Florida. Like, fairly certain that
they would not be the first.
That had nothing to do with their twin status.
It had everything to do with their University of Florida status.
Well, right. And Aaron Hernandez, I'm done with their free Hernandez hats. But I can tell you that I will miss Marquise dearly as a Browns fan after watching him hike that ball over Ben's head into the end zone.
A whole 10 yards.
Divisional round game. That was so beautiful that made me want to cry like that because it was wonderful. But yeah, I'm sort of fascinated by them. I don't hate them at all. I'm a little afraid of them, but I find them interesting in the same way that I find like, Gothic horror interesting.
I will say, I thought Mike was obviously a great player for the. I heard the Gothic horror part. I want to get.
Well, I'm just. It's like I don't think the Pounceys have ever been compared to like Gothic horror ever in their life. But
that's how you
are.
get the real takes. Samantha Button with the real takes on
Unleashed. That's the
twin
subtitle
sinners
of our show, Samantha
Unleashed.
Unleashed.
But yeah, obviously Mike had a great career with the Dolphins. Played center primarily, did move to guard for one season. But my connection is kind of interesting. So I have a brother who's a huge Steelers fan. No, he's never even been to Pittsburgh. He just grew up for whatever reason. He wanted to find a team that was successful, and the Steelers have been for decades. But he has, an ex-wife. And at one point, she sent him a picture because she went to University of Florida. She sent him a picture with one of the Pounceys, and they were like partying together. And he's like, I'm simultaneously like disgusted and in awe of my ex, who's like hooking up with one. Apparently, she was hooking up with one of the Pounceys. So that's my story. That's the end of it. But it was, that's my tie to the Pounceys. But they had a great career. Mike was fantastic in Miami, and I at least wanted to get a mention.
Talking about, I delivered pizza to Rex Grossman one time when I was at Florida.
When he was at UF, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I met Tebow a few times. I lived next to Ray McDonald, and I know nobody will remember who that is, but he was a
is he a safety?
No.
Oh, okay.
He's a D-line guy, but he
sounds like a safety.
So they give them these scooters, right? Like these little 50cc, like
they did that. Yeah, they did that at Florida State too.
They get scooters, and like, let me tell you, man, like it's so hilarious to see like two of these like linemen get on one of these like 50cc Yamahas, and the thing to just ride on the wheel like down the street, struggling for life. Like, it's so awesome. Living next to them was pretty fun because they just, they go crazy. One time when we're ever like on the what's the second show we do now? The party show.
The flavor of the week.
I'll tell the story to our listeners.
Way to be up with the show. Thanks, bud.
I'll tell the story to our listeners about when I walked on at Florida football.
Okay, well that'll be a future episode. I'm guessing that was a one and done single day scenario. But
we're not going to spoil it. We're not going to spoil it.
On the college note, I do want to talk about one other thing before we get into the Browns deep dive with Samantha. And that is that former Clemson quarterback, presumptive number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, actually had his own individual quote unquote pro day. So he had a shoulder injury. It was his non-throwing shoulder, and he was set to have surgery. And apparently Urban Meyer wanted to see him throw. So they arranged to have him have his own little pro day months earlier than most of the other prospects would. And so he did throw, and he impressed as expected. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is two things. Do any of us here think that there's any chance of him not going number 1 overall? Samantha, I'll start with you, and then I want to get your thoughts on. I know you have opinions on the pro day themselves, so I want to get that separately. But how do you think? Is it like he's locked in at number 1? What do you think?
I would be shocked if he didn't go number 1 overall. I mean, I have a lot of opinions about Urban Meyer, and none of them are good, especially when we're talking about Urban Meyer.
Oh, I want to hear about that then. So, but yes, continue.
If I were Trevor Lawrence, I would pull a Manning family and be like, I'll sit out if I have to play for that. Would be me. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's any reason, unless something goes horribly wrong with his surgery, which there's no reason to think that will happen. I don't see anybody, unless somebody made an offer they couldn't refuse, I guess, for that first overall pick. But that's the only way I could see it happening. I figure almost no chance.
Well, what are your thoughts? And I'm going to come back to Samantha with the dig on Urban Meyer because I want to find out more about that. But
I don't appreciate that dig, by the way. Urban Meyer.
I
gave Urban Meyer car buying advice when he was at Florida. I was stopped at a red light right by the stadium, and he was walking by, and I had just bought my it was an Infiniti FX45 at the time, and he was like getting ready to cross, and I had my window down, and I was like, Herb, and he's like, hey, and he's like, I was thinking about getting one of those. You like it? I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. He's like, cool. And he just walked across the street. That was my story. That was not a very good story. Shut up.
No,
listen,
not.
Here's the thing, right? Like why throw if you're Trevor Lawrence? Like, why even have a pro day? You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like, it seemed kind of risky for him to do it. I mean, or I guess not.
And no, but that was a question that was asked to him. And he said, why not? I don't have anything to hide. And there was actually, like, Todd McShay had a whole write-up about how he liked that, and it showed some perseverance. Normally, and I'm going to get to Samantha in a second because I know she has opinions on the pro day themselves. Normally, it's heavily scripted, it's planned and prepared for months in advance. It's all with receivers that you're intimately familiar with. Well, Trevor had to be adaptable. He had to move it up short and kind of put it together on the fly. There was only one Clemson receiver. The other receivers were, I think, either free agent NFL wide receivers, but not big names, or up and coming college prospects. So there is kind of like, there's a little bit of kudos for that, for the fact that he put it together on the fly. But I'm going to use that to turn it over to Samantha. I want to hear, I've seen it on Twitter, your thoughts on the uselessness of pro days.
They're so controlled.
Yeah.
You can control everything at a pro day, and what I'll touch on Trevor Lawrence in a minute, because that was a little bit different. And you're right. I think what he did is a little bit more credible than your typical pro day because he was forced into it, quite frankly. But okay, that's not his fault. So we're not going to hold that against him. But look, there's so many elements of the situation that you're in at a pro day that, you're on your home turf. You can play your music. You've got your receivers. You've got all your people there. You can control the temperature. You can control every single element of that, down to, as you mentioned, the script. And we've seen, I'm sure you've seen lists of them where they just show you, that'll give you the list of every throw they're going to make. And everything is planned down to which receiver is going to catch which pass, what route they're going to run, everything. I mean, down to even, for some guys, who's allowed to talk to them. So it's not really very representative of anything other than your best self, which is great. Of course, that's what you want to showcase. Of course, if you're given the option to perform in this manner for essentially an audition, of course, you're going to try to set it up so that it is showcasing your best abilities and masking your flaws. But we all need to recognize that that's what this is, right? That's all it is. It's a guy going out there and showing you his highlight reel. We're not seeing any of the bad. We're not seeing any of the questionable. Nobody's even under normal circumstances when Urban Meyer isn't asking, when just, the rest of us, hoi polloi are asking. You don't get to dictate that. You don't get to say, I want you to do this now. I want you to throw to this person. I want you to make this specific throw. It's totally up to you. So I sort of fail to see the value in it because we've seen your best self. You probably wouldn't even be in the position to be hosting a pro day if we didn't know what your best self could do, if your best self wasn't NFL ready. It's all the other stuff I'm interested in seeing that I don't get to see at a pro day because you are steering it such that nobody's really allowed to kind of knock you sort of off your spot a little bit and see how you respond.
So counterpoint, right? Or devil's advocate thing, right? Like, so the fact that you're being in the situation that you're in and being evaluated, like you've put stuff on tape, right? That's not that. So there's that. Number two, you still have to make the throws. So like a lot of probably what they're looking at is like, so that, I know that, right? It's scripted, but also scouts know that, and people that can evaluate these kind of things, right? So like your throwing motion, your time, your quickness, to release, all those sort of things, like your footwork, like all those kind of things, probably get evaluated more so than like the scriptiness of what you're actually doing. So I don't know if they're like necessarily evaluated like as an isolated thing in and of themselves. Like, we hear about like, oh, he had a great pro day or he had a bad pro day or whatever. But like, I would hope there's more to evaluating like these people or these quarterbacks than that. I have actually said on this show numerous times that I think that NFL teams and GMs really just overthink quarterbacks. Like, that's how we end up with the Mitchell Trubisky's being like number 2, and like some of these quarterbacks like Wentz and Goff just going with these absurdly high prices that are just obvious to everybody who watches college football that they are just average. And these teams are selling out for them. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess the last point I just made is kind of counter to my other points, but like, I guess
you're arguing with yourself.
It's one of those things. Like, I think we just overthink it, I mean, like, again, back to DeShaun Watson to bring this full circle. Like, he didn't need a pro day. Like, you saw him in college, you saw him on the stage versus Alabama. The dude has ice in his veins and you knew he was going to be a stud. Like, he was one of the most surefire things to ever come out of college that I can remember, other than Andrew Luck, who was.
And yet the Bears didn't think that, which is why they drafted Trubisky ahead of Watson.
It's unreal, man. Like, that's a losing franchise. Like, the fact that you don't see that in people, and then you, yeah. So I don't know.
Well, with the fact that there's no combine this year, we'll ask this and then we'll talk about the Browns. Samantha, do you think that changes pro days at all? The fact that there is no actual combine with all the COVID procedures that are going on?
Somewhat, yeah. I asked a couple of scouts about this, and I think their take was that mostly they could get what they needed from the film, that they felt pretty good about that, and that pro days were really more about sort of clearing up any doubt. If you needed to talk to people about perhaps character concerns that you had about these guys, it would be an opportunity to get on campus and go talk to maybe the clubhouse, the attendant in the locker room, or whoever serves their food, or some other person. If you do have an issue, talk to some teammates, talk to a professor or somebody like that who could shed some light on it, who wouldn't be like a coach, who wouldn't be necessarily I guess, knowing exactly what to say to tell you what you wanted to hear, that they might betray something. So, there's some value in that. But for the most part, I think these guys said, hey, I can get what I need out of the film. Yeah, without a combine, sure, we still have ways of doing measurables. So it's not the end of the world. And it's probably, maybe it's more valuable this year. And I would certainly agree that I think it would hold value that I wouldn't think it would in a normal year. But I'm not sure it is going to hold the type of value that's going to be assigned to it by media narratives, by fans, because we don't have a combine. So everybody's going to look to that as though that's going to tell them who's good and who's not. And it's just not going to work that way.
Right. And the fact that, Will, you're hit the nail on the head when you say that if they just watch the tape, and I love that Samantha mentioned that scouts actually said, oh, I have what I have on tape. And when I've heard and read reports from scouts themselves and people who cover the draft, that's the most important thing anyway. So maybe having no combine, maybe that'll force these scouts and these NFL teams to focus more on the thing that matters the most, which is the tape of them actually playing football games in the first place.
I mean, DK Metcalf ran a slower shuttle than Tom Brady. And that was actually a thing, and he had to rerun it to
he's like the size of a door, though. It's kind of hard for a door to run this shuttle with that agility. But yeah, but that goes to show you, obviously he was had a great.
I mean, I don't know all these things. You talk about oh, I want to talk to his professors and find out about his character. There are a lot of garbage human beings in the NFL that are really good at football, right?
Antonio Brown.
Okay, sure. If you want to do that, he's redeemed. He has redeemed himself. Listen,
not from a human standpoint, from a football player standpoint. Sure.
Call God, as he says. Listen, don't talk about. Don't listen. We're not talking about him. But, Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill. We could go on with the number of garbage human beings that are really good at football and somehow just I guess figure it out. So I don't know, it's always weird. I guess you have to do your due diligence, and you don't want to end up with who's that cat that smokes weed every 5 seconds? I forget his name. The
Josh
guy,
Gordon?
That's him. Yeah. He's suspended indefinitely. And then Roger Goodell's
weed shouldn't be a character issue, though. That's an entirely different discussion. We can save that for the flavor of the week one week, but weed, whatever.
Weed is not a performance enhancing drug.
No,
if you want to get high as hell, and go out there and try to read a defense, please do. I would love to see that.
That would be entertaining. Let's go ahead and move on. Obviously, we'll find out how exactly having no combine shapes the draft in the coming months. Yeah.
Samantha, do you think that Trevor Lawrence's golden mane of hair helps or hinders his draft prospects?
I can't tell you the number of times when it seemed some older man who doesn't really follow football, I'll be like, it looks like there's a girl out there. Wow.
He looks like Jar Jar Binks with a wig.
Yeah, I feel like it's not working for him. It's not working the way that Clay Matthews III, the way his hair worked for him. He really had that hair working for him. Yes.
Or Chase. What's his nuts? Winovich.
Oh, Chase Winovich
in New England. Yeah.
Yes.
But those are mains. Those add to the intimidation almost. Whereas Lawrence is he could be a cover girl.
Lawrence is Mean Girls or Clueless. You know what I mean?
So let's move on because now, as I talked about earlier, we are going to continue our team's deep dive where, as a reminder, every single week we are getting a deep dive on a different NFL team, and we're getting it from a fan of that team. And who better to break down the Browns than Samantha Button of NBC Sports, who is from Ohio, a lifelong Browns and Indians fan. Quick teaser, if you're sticking around for the flavor of the week, I think we might get some Indians talk out of Samantha. But Samantha, I want to start with you. This is a little bit of a toss-up question because obviously Cleveland got to the playoffs, for the first time in 24 years, first victory in 26 years, something like that. But I want to start with a recap. What are your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns' success in the 2020 season?
I was pleasantly surprised. This is certainly not what I was expecting, mostly because if you're from Cleveland, you don't ever expect any success out of the Browns. And we always sort of talk about how it pays to be a pessimist because you're either right or you're pleasantly surprised. And that's what happened this time around with the Browns. We caught ourselves, but it's funny how quickly you get into the mindset of, hey, we can do this, and getting really disappointed and upset. You can't. Well, they kind of would have had the head-to-head, the helmet-to-helmet been called. Well, I can't say that. I can't say we know for a fact.
Or if Stefanski tries to go for it on that fourth down instead of punting it away and never getting the ball back. But yes.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. Just that now I'm upset. Yeah, you had two opportunities, and I don't like to blame refs because put yourself in a position where you're not dependent on the refs. But there's a touchdown there. That's a 7-point swing right there, and Stefanski's brain cramp that he had where we're sitting there thinking, well, remember last week when you weren't allowed to coach? Like maybe we should have left you alone.
That seemed to work out well against Pittsburgh.
So and it's funny how quickly you can go from like, we're so happy to be here, this is so exciting, which is what was going on before the Pittsburgh game. Like, they're probably going to kill us, but it's fine. We're back in the playoffs. We don't care. Yay us. To the end of that Kansas City game where we were all getting like really like murdery and upset and outraged at everything that, anything that went wrong, whether it was the refs, whether it was Kevin Stefanski, whether it was, Daniel Sorensen or whoever the target was at the moment. But yeah, you can shift pretty quick from like, shell shocked that you're not an 0-16 team to I feel so ripped off that I'm not in the Super Bowl.
Do you think
I think everybody outside of Kansas City and maybe other AFC North teams, everybody was a Browns fan that night. I know I was. I got like, oh, this is going to happen. Like I completely wrote them off. I picked the Chiefs to win. But man, did I want Cleveland to win that game.
Yeah. Brian took the Browns to the Super Bowl before the game started, just to kind of preempt.
Well, you said the same thing. We were on the Browns bandwagon. We were like, if there's any team we're cheering for, well, you were cheering for Brady, but God, I can't believe I said
Listen, no, I was cheering for the Browns. I really
on the AFC.
Listen, I just said like I really like the Browns. So, what was better, like almost beating the Chiefs or how butthurt every single Pittsburgh Steeler was for like a week, because they were really mad, like really what's the word for it? Salty. Like the salt was flowing.
I mean, at the risk of sounding petty at the expense of being competitive, that was better.
I agree.
I mean, also that's a win, and the Chiefs win isn't even, it's an almost win. It's that's a moral victory. You almost beat the Chiefs. Like, that does nothing for me. At the end of the day, I still had to go home.
So let me ask you this question about the Browns. So before we talk about addressing in the draft. So, like Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, like that duo in the UGA backfield, right? Like was dynamic. You know how like people like in the world, right? Like some of them have like an eye thing. And like their left eye like is pretty normal, but then their like right eye is kind of like lazy and spazzes out and it looks kind of weird. Like I feel like the Browns got the good eye, and like the Patriots got like the lazy eye that you
I'm trying to in my head. I'm like, where the hell is he going with this?
Not where I thought that was going.
No, welcome to the Pigskin Party podcast. This is what we get from Will 4 or 5 times a show. I had no idea where he was
going. Sony Michel is the lazy eye of that duo. Like he's so like not good compared to Nick Chubb, who is fantastic. Like, tell me, like, not even, like, no BS, right? Like, I'm a huge Nick Chubb fan. Like, I don't care where that guy goes. And, like, he went to Georgia, so obviously I didn't like him because of that. But now he's in the NFL, so that goes away. But, like, what a stud. Like, his vision is surprisingly incredible. Like, probably one of the best backs in the league right now, if I had to put him up there. I mean,
I don't think there's many arguments there. Yeah, I think most people would put him at least top 5, probably
and it just gets
higher.
funny, like how bad the Patriots got shafted from picking that duo. Like, it's like, man, you could have had this, but instead you have that. It's so just incredible.
It's nice to see you laugh at the Patriots, by the way, now that Brady's gone.
I said that when they were there.
I know.
I hate Sony Michel. He's garbage. Like Rex, what's his nut? Burkhead was better. James White was better. You know, like they have so many, like, I don't know. James White's a different thing. We're not talking about the Patriots, but draft Browns. That's where we're at.
So let's segue that into obviously, as we talked about, they made it to playoffs. They beat the Steelers. There's a bright future. Stefanski got Coach of the Year, well deserved. I was cheering for Brian Flores to get it, but I can have no qualms with Kevin Stefanski getting that. But they're not perfect. They do have some holes. So what positions would you personally like to see them target early in the draft, Samantha?
I think the first thing you need to go after is safeties. I think if you looked at just a depth chart, if you looked at where the talent is on the Browns, you'd probably come away saying, I think they need to go after linebackers. And that would be your absolute most urgent need. And I don't know that you'd be picking up a linebacker in the first round, for example, but it would be your primary target, your most important thing. But they're doing something kind of cool, and they're trying to build a base defense that's kind of like a 6-1-4, which I know sounds crazy, but Joe Woods is pretty passionate about what he's doing there. And his assertion is that because they are so frequently dealing with these huge, productive, incredible tight ends, that you need to have the extra safeties on the field and rather than linebackers. So you set up this really bizarre formation, which you see it all the time in games. You just don't see it as a base package. But ideally, that's the goal. So even though technically they are thinner linebacker, that's probably not the thing that they will go after. I think it's safety. I would agree with that. But then I'm a big, safeties gal. So my favorite position on the field, which is of course why all of the Brown safeties stink.
I'm a real fan of the base packages of tight ends.
The what?
It was an immature comment, and we could just gloss over that.
Oh.
I warned you about this, as he's going to throw in some comments.
Geez.
You can just ignore him talking about tight ends.
I mean, look at what's his nuts, Minka Fitzpatrick, right? Like, what did he add? Like how big was Winfield in that game?
Yeah,
the Super Bowl. Like, by the way,
and the rest of the playoffs, Winfield was great in the playoffs.
I think that that deuce he threw up in Tyreek Hill's face is probably the best, pettiest taunt of all NFL history. Like, there's been some really good ones, and I actually want to maybe we do this in our next episode, debate the best ones, like Randy Moss's moon that Joe Buck lost his mind over. But
we need off-season content. We can.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, look at Matthew or whatever the frick his name is, Honey Badger.
Tyrann Mathieu. Yeah.
If you have dominant safeties, it just wrecks quarterbacks. So I think it's a good take.
What about free agency? Do you think Baker Mayfield can get some more weapons? I believe Jarvis Landry is a free agent, correct? What do you see?
No. Landry will be staying.
Okay.
So it's, I think they are, but yeah, I mean, they certainly could use more weapons. I know there's been a little bit of buzz about Allen Robinson, possibly. I'm not sure. I think that's a fit, but it's definitely something that's on their radar. The JJ Watt thing obviously has come up because they're looking at, of course, needing to replace Olivier, who was injured last year, but would have been a free agent anyway, and probably would have left. But so a little bit of help up front, although that is not as urgent as pretty much the entire rest of the defense. You need help at corner too, but the offense, far less urgent, although some depth would be nice and another weapon would be great. He doesn't really have a true number one receiver right now, and I would love to see Baker have a true number one, or if he can't get that, I would love to see him get sort of quantity in terms of number of guys that he can throw to, because Odell, I mean, we don't.
Julian Edelman.
I was going to ask you that next. So you feel that OBJ is
wait, before you answer that, do you think that losing OBJ actually helped Baker Mayfield?
A lot of Browns fans think that. To me, no, not necessarily. I will say I don't think it actually hurt them that badly to lose him, but I'm not sure I go so far as to say it helps them, unless you really believe he was that big of a distraction. And I just don't think Baker would allow that to happen. But Landry has been the go-to guy, and with Hollywood kind of running number two. So I guess if we don't all have to listen to Odell screaming and crying about stuff, that's helpful. But I don't actually think it had that big of an impact either direction.
Well, he seemed to, I mean, just from like my casual observance of Browns football, which was casual, let's be honest, but I did watch him a fair amount. He seemed to like make more, like he seemed to want to fit it into Odell a lot, and like that just like it's not his thing. He seemed to like have to kind of just figure it out, and go to like Landry kind of came on a little late, I would say, in the season. I mean, they're always going to, I mean, it seems like it's going to be a Chubb first offense.
Well, and
sure.
that's honestly, that's where Baker really started to excel, is when they leaned into play action more. When that running game really got going with Chubb and Hunt, then Baker was able to do what he does well, which he's a very accurate quarterback under play action, and he didn't have to feel like he had to force feed any one particular receiver. I want to transition this actually into talking about Baker. Based on the comment you said, Samantha, I'm guessing you're a Baker believer, but I still want to hear from you. Do you think he is the franchise quarterback for the Browns long term?
Yes, I do. I will preface this by saying that when he was drafted, I thought he was the guy. Then we hit a bit of a rough patch, and then I felt like
we had a moment.
I don't know about this. Are we going down the road where, another Browns quarterback? Here we go again. But he has completely restored my faith in him. I absolutely think he's the guy. Is he the most talented quarterback, the best athlete at the position in the NFL? No, not even close. Never going to be. Doesn't matter. He's a winner. He's a guy who knows how to win, and I will take that any day over a better athlete. Now, am I saying that makes him better than Aaron Rodgers? No. But am I saying it makes him better than somebody who's maybe a little bit better athlete than he is, who doesn't have the same competitive fire, who doesn't have the, like, just win at any cost, figure out a way? Like, that's what he does. There are guys who are just good at that. I think there's just a handful of people every once in a while. I mean, the Browns had one in Bernie Kosar, too. I mean, you've seen, probably seen film of Bernie Kosar running. It was hideous. It was awful. It was awkward. But he knew how to win games. And Baker really impressed me this year. I think he stepped up as a leader. I think he learned how to kind of take that cocky, arrogant stuff that was mostly just making people mad for a while and turn it into something that he can use in a positive way. So yeah, I like him as a leader, and I like him as a quarterback.
I think Stefanski had a lot to do with that, though, because
yes,
like when you look at who was that, Kitchens, like Freddie and Kitchens and Baker were friends, but the problem was
they weren't.
Yeah, that didn't last long.
No, what I'm saying is that they were two personalities that resonated in the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like they had that thing where, like, there was video on the side, Baker calling him a doofus. You know what I mean? And like they had that,
Baker was walking all over him instead of respecting.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is they
from what I heard, the whole team was doing that with Freddie. He just nobody respected him.
Right.
Yeah.
And but
everybody who's ever met Freddie does that with Freddie.
That's the difference. Have you ever met Freddie Kitchens, by the way?
I have. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But so what I'm saying is that like that's what you get when you take somebody who, got to that position off their assistants, right? Largely off the success of their assistants. Then they're suddenly the head coach. They don't have like that leadership foundation to know when to pull that back. Right. And so they bring in different people that didn't get them there, cut off their support system. And they have this style about them that they think is what it is. They think that's the magic juice, right? To be like this friend and to have this relationship. But what they actually are doing is undercutting their authority, their respect, right? And like
he was in over his head as a coach in general, regardless of his relationship. It's good to have a relationship with your players, especially with your star quarterback. But I just think he didn't understand how to run a team. I think that was clear from early on.
Yeah, but you got to have a little bit of that, like Bruce Arians. Like the guys really respect Bruce Arians, but like look at what they just did in that boat parade, bro. Like that, they have a great relationship. But like Bruce Arians is not a guy you just like shit on for lulls. You know what I mean?
What does BA have to do with tossing Lombardi trophies across boats? I mean, I don't understand your comparison here.
No, what I mean is you can be awesome without being like a bro and like having a destructive relationship.
You still need to be a leader. You need to have that respect
and
from the leadership
I think
side.
Stefanski is not Kitchens at all. Like he's like a nerd kind of, like a reserved, like intellectual,
a handsome nerd, but a nerd nonetheless. Sure.
But to Samantha's
No,
point,
he's handsome dad. He's a handsome dad.
He is handsome dad. Yeah.
We
can all aspire to that as dads.
I really don't
ourselves.
think he's that handsome. I don't know. Do you think Baker should get his thing like his tooth like just bring them together, or do you like the little is it football-y to have like the gap in his front teeth, or do you think he should like fix that?
I think Baker thinks it's football-y. To me, it's a little bit hard to look at. Like, it's sort of, I don't know, it's evocative of some kind of like elfin thing that I really don't like. But, if Baker thinks that is football-y, that's like the tough guy look, like, oh, even my teeth are messed up, then, if he needs that in his mind, then I think he should keep it. He can look weird. I don't need him to look good.
Strahan rocked it for like ever.
If he wins, yeah, who cares? Like, who cares? If Tua knocks all his teeth out, but they go, 16-0, I don't care what his teeth look like. I just want the success. I'll say that I think Baker in that Stefanski offense works really well. Obviously, Stefanski worked with a play-action quarterback with Cousins in Minnesota. I think that style of offense, there was a lot of speculation that it would work well with Baker, and it has. So Baker is not a DeShaun Watson. Baker is not somebody who's going to take the whole team on his back and win the game single-handedly, regardless of what's around him. But in an offense that is run-centered, where he can work off the play action, throw his accurate passes, I agree, Samantha, that he could use some more playmakers and a stronger defense, especially the pass defense. And I think the Browns could see some success for years to come.
I really want somebody who hates the Browns, caveat, who's not a Steelers fan, to come to present an argument why you can hate the Browns.
So we need a Ravens fan or a Bengals fan. Nobody hates the Browns. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you hate the Browns, bro? You can't.
Right.
That's like saying you hate the Lions. Like, I mean, really? Or the Cardinals? You can't. You know what I mean? That's so mean. Like, why would you do that?
I know some Lions fans that hate the Lions. So
exactly.
That's an entirely different thing.
Our producer, Mr. Wiener.
Yes,
he hates the Lions from time to time.
Anthony has he's young, but he's had nothing but bad experiences as a Detroit Lions fan. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on. You are going to stick around and do the flavor of the week. So for those listening, make sure to listen to something non-football related. We'll have Samantha back on for. Will, whatever, you're there. You're always there. Thanks for
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Make sure, obviously, please tell your friends about the show. Subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, Samantha did us the favor of calling in her busy schedule. And so she won't be on the video, but we're super thankful to have her anyway. So if you're hoping to see Samantha in the YouTube video, that you're just going to be looking at a nice headshot, make sure to reach out to us on social media.
Dude, you know what you should do? You should cut out the mouth and then do that thing where somebody like Anthony just talks behind the, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely
you should do that.
Not going to do that to Samantha. But your suggestion is duly noted. Make sure to check out our Patreon and our community and Discord. We'll leave the links in the episode description. Reach out to us on social media at official PP Pod on Twitter. Make sure to stick around for the flavor of the week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.